Welcome to My Ruby Slippers with Lilly and Cilly Strong. Thank you for joining us as we search to find our inner sparkle to overcome abuse, misuse, and cruelty. One of the first questions I always get when I share my story is, how did you not know? And last episode, I gave my side of the story. In today's episode, I'm handing the reins over to my adult child, Cilly, and they're going to give their perspective.
This is definitely something that it's a very different perspective for me. First of all, I don't usually get asked, how did you not know?
Right.
And I think there's a level of my generation, my friends are more in the know about abuse and how to respond to situations like that. I think the internet has opened up a lot of that.
Yeah.
So there might be an element of that, but also, I think people kind of just have a different idea of child abuse than marital abuse. Mm-hmm. But just like you, I wasn't hit, so it wasn't that kind of abuse. But yeah, it's still a different perspective because I just literally never knew anything else.
Right.
So I had no framework, no concept of having boundaries. That was not a thing.
It was not allowed.
It wasn't allowed. It wasn't a thing. Even I remember from a very young age, he would kiss us on the cheek or whatever, and it would be wet, and I would wipe it away because it was gross.
Yes. Ew.
He did that a lot, and then he would get mad at me for wiping it away.
Yeah.
I was like, stop. But I wasn't allowed to say stop. I wasn't allowed to say stop when I was a middle schooler, and he was snapping my bra strap.
Oh my gosh.
He loved to do that. And then he'd be like, don't let any other boys do this.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That gives me the...
Oh, it's gross.
Oh.
It's so gross. But I was allowed to have boundaries with other people, but not with him.
Not with him.
But he still didn't teach me how to set a boundary or anything. So it wasn't like I super did. But no boys in my school were doing that to me. It was just him.
Just him.
So I didn't know boundaries. I didn't even know things like health insurance. These things that most people kind of just know about or have a concept of. I just remember I was absent a lot in high school. And I asked my friend who was also, she had chronic illness, so she had to be absent a lot. And I was like, how do you get doctor's notes for the amount of absences you have? And she was like, oh, it's just we just pay a little copay, get a doctor's appointment, get a note. It's not that hard. And I came to you about it and I was like, she said something about a copay? And you were like, That's for if you have a health insurance.
Those lucky people, yeah.
Right, we weren't allowed to have it.
We had no health insurance.
Yeah, we weren't supposed to go to the doctor unless something was super duper wrong. Mm-hmm. Also, for college, the FAFSA, there was a whole situation where, we were okay, we're gonna, I'm applying for college, and there's on the college application, not even the FAFSA itself, but the college application where you fill out the FAFSA related, the financial page. And, I asked him to come do that, and, he had to lock all the doors.
Kick everybody out. He's sitting there hunched over with a calculator.
Right, which it doesn't take that with the FAFSA if you we didn't have a tax return, but
right.
Or taxes filed. I was like, yeah, sure. That's totally a normal way to manage household funds. Not allow your children to see them.
Right.
And then, he pretended that was the FAFSA and not, a separate thing. Because we couldn't apply for the FAFSA because we didn't have any taxes filed.
Right. Yeah, to clarify, he had not been filing taxes.
Correct.
And he was the head of household. And so there again, how did I not know? I trusted him.
You already gave up the financial power to him.
I would hand him my W-2 forms and not even think about it.
Mm-hmm. And he very much pretended he knew what he was doing.
Yes.
I mean, even for me, and I'm I was I'm not interested in this. I'm 12. So, I just didn't have a concept of anything. Right. And that's not something that you can get a concept from, reading a book. I'm not getting that from fiction either. There's just not much of anything that I'm getting anywhere. And the church isn't telling me that.
No.
It's obey your parents, and the man is the head, head of the household, and all of this. So I just didn't have any other framework. So emotionally, I was also specifically raised and groomed to be within his control. Mm-hmm. And half of that was like constantly saying like I'm inferior to him, right? And part of that comes back to like the misogyny. I was just a little girl. I would say something silly and it'd be like, oh, but at least you're pretty.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I know you've said that as a joke too.
Oh, but I say like, it sarcastically.
It's very much, you know, like there's a difference.
Yeah.
And, you know, he was the type that was like, women shouldn't actually vote. And
he used to say that all the time.
Yeah.
The downfall of our country began when women got the right to it.
Yep. But then also he was obsessed with the whole like bell curve of like women tend to be of average intelligence, but men are either really dumb or really smart. He really liked, he really had all of these
imagined facts.
Yeah, and I'm sure he was getting some of those from other places. He loved that kind of a thing. He also used to tell me that I wasn't actually as like inherently smart as him, but I had your like work ethic for studying. Like he was like, oh, I was always so good at testing and I would just walk in and get the test done. And then now it's like, okay, but then you went to college and then clearly something went wrong there.
Right. Well, obviously we can't believe anything he says.
Yeah,
now.
Of course. Who knows? But he loved to just be like, yeah, it was all so easy. But like you're good because you have like a study ethic. I don't have that strong of a study ethic. I can't lie.
Now that you have ADHD.
I do have ADHD and
didn't know it all through
school.
I
didn't know it until literally a few months after graduating from college.
Right.
So bizarre to me because I'm like, I mean, I did my homework. I was good about doing that, but it was, you know.
But you were smart.
I was smart.
Yes, you are smart.
Thank you. But, you know, just being put down for stuff like that. Another story that, you know, I always bring up is when I was pretty young still, and I was in the bathtub taking a bath, and I don't know where you were, but he was the one that was in charge of my bath time. And I got shampoo in my eyes. And I wasn't tolerating it well because that's shampoo in my eyes. It
was burning.
It was burning. And I was sitting in the soapy water, so I didn't want to rub my eyes because that would not help anything.
Yes.
So he just started like putting me down, insulting me, telling me I'm so wimpy and all these things, just like tearing me to pieces. Afterwards, he said that was to make me cry so that I would cry the shampoo out of my eyes. It was for my own good.
He was the hero.
He was the hero because I refused to wipe my eyes with soapy water.
So he had to do this.
So he had to do this. And then I brought that up with him when he was getting better, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I can see how you would think that I was doing something wrong. So even when he was claiming that he was getting better, even when it was like divorce is happening and we know this, he was still saying stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's fun. Oh, and then the other half of just kind of that emotional grooming was like kind of similar to how you were isolated from your friends, where it's just like we're kind of this in-group and everybody outside is just like crazy.
Yes.
And this is also, you know, again, we need to have a whole episode about the spiritual abuse. Church played a role in that too. And then he would say like people who think something's weird are the ones that are weird.
Yes.
This was especially when it came to like physical boundaries in our family.
Yes.
Which were very overstepped. As I said with the bra thing, like if somebody else says it's weird, they're the ones that are making it weird.
Exactly. You recently told me a story that I didn't know about him telling you that you were unlikable.
Oh yeah, this is definitely something that I'm pretty sure happened more than once. I don't have like a very specific memory of like a location of it happening or anything like that.
Right.
This was a message I was told a lot, was that I'm inherently unlikable. He didn't say inherently. I think that word's a little too big for him. But it was a constant messaging of that. Like, nobody will like you if you're always moody like this. Or you're never going to have friends if you aren't smiling or whatever. Like, whatever was bothering him about me in that moment. Because I have issues with... I was a little bit of a moody child. I had undiagnosed ADHD, as we said.
And I would disagree. I don't think you were moody at all.
I wasn't moody, but you've said I was a little
children are moody.
Yes.
That's part of being a person.
But, you know, you've also mentioned that I was...
You were my Italian child.
She called me her Italian child.
Her name is Cicely for a reason.
But yeah, I had big emotions. And I had a lot of things bothering me. And whereas my brothers were kind of recognized as being, oh, they're autistic and need certain accommodations, I didn't get any of that.
Right.
Because I was just supposed to be normal. Because he was weird about all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I had big emotions about this. And so when I wasn't always smiley, he would tear into me about that. It's always like, you are not going to have friends. And he would say, Mom and I love you because we have to.
Which is so sad.
It's upsetting.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I know that that's not the truth.
You have a lot of friends. You have a lot of people who love you.
I have friends. But it did, in part of that is it made me a people pleaser. It made me somebody who could make a lot of friends.
Right.
And now I'm having to do the process of not, like as we were saying earlier, I need to not be so people pleasing. I need to upset people more. I need to be...
Create your boundaries.
To hold a space in the world. I can't be nothing.
Yes.
But, you know, being a kid, being a people pleaser, again, as you said, like, I was like, oh, you're a really sweet kid.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh, like... you know, you're so whatever, and like that just means like I can't stop.
Right.
I can never stop being like the sweet kid that, you know, all the adults love, and you know, it was probably to an extent a teacher's pet, to that type of a thing.
Your teachers always loved you.
It's true. They did.
Yep.
It molded me into being easy for him to do whatever, and that's just that's the foundations of my very being at this point.
Right.
I didn't know that any of that was weird.
Right.
Because even as a child, you're hearing discipline is important, and it's okay for your parents to tell you that things are wrong sometimes. Mm-hmm. And that's true, but I had no concept of, okay, he shouldn't be telling me that I'm inherently unlikable. You should maybe be telling me, like, don't touch the hot stove.
Yeah. Life skills?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of those things where I had no concept. And there's still things that I learned today that I get blown away by.
Right.
And I'm just like, wait, your parents will, like, do that for you? That's crazy.
So that's similar to the water slowly getting to boiling point.
It's more like I was born in the boiling water. So I don't know what room temperature water feels like.
Okay, yes.
And so that's one of those things where like there's I can never think of the phrase, the repetitive cycle of abuse type of a thing, where people who were abused go back into abuse. They tend to.
They tend to, yes.
Because when you're...
But not us, we're breaking the cycle.
We're working on it. But when you are in that hot water, you're born into it, and you get put in room temperature water. It feels like you're getting frostbite.
Oh, that's true.
It feels uncomfortable.
Yeah. And
you have to kind of push out of that. And I imagine it's probably similar even for you who wasn't born into abuse. You know, I think for anybody who's been groomed and really abused for such a long period of time, you're accustomed to it. It's weird leaving that.
Right.
I never knew any better. But I think over time, all of that starts to manifest as like anxiety, and I had a lot of issues. I've had physical health issues, which you have also. I've had anxiety, which you have also. These are things that just, when you're suppressing like your own personhood, these things take a toll on you.
They do.
In some way. Stress harms you on a deep biological level.
Oh, yes, definitely.
It was especially high school and going into college where I was realizing, like, I can't fit this mold that he was creating for me. It's not possible. Even with the little things, like he didn't want me to be a nerd, or he didn't want me to be gay. He didn't want me to be any level of things.
And he thought he could dictate who you were.
Yes, he fully did. And another thing that he would do was he would always talk about how I was like the one that was like him. I was the child that was like him.
Yes, because your two brothers, their personalities are more like mine.
Right. he would always say I was the fun one, which is so mean. Like, I have a good relationship with my brothers and I love them.
They're awesome.
They're awesome. That was a him problem.
Oh, definitely. Yes. I think you were just the one he thought he could relate to more.
It's possible.
But look at me defending him.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a level of, first of all, I have ADHD, which I would not be surprised if he did, too.
Right. It runs in his family.
It runs in his family. A lot of his laziness, I'm like, There might be an element of that where both of my brothers are a lot quieter. And I'm like way more hyper than they are. And I'm more social. But also, I was a girl and they were boys. I needed to be molded. I needed to be guided to be what I'm supposed to be a pretty wife someday. No, it's not me.
Right.
And then I started learning about things, especially when I was like getting sick and all of this. My anxiety was a problem. It was a huge problem at that point in my life. And I started going to counseling through my college.
Which was a big thing because we weren't allowed to go to counseling.
Oh, yeah, we were not supposed to do any therapy or anything. This was free, so a little bit more allowed than standard healthcare.
Than actually having to pay for healthcare.
Yeah. But I started therapy and he was not stoked about that.
Not at all.
But it was important for me to go, and I think I had reached a point where he couldn't deny that.
But didn't he give you like some dire warning?
Yes, he was like, you need to be so careful of the things that they tell you in there because they will try to turn you.
They'll try to brainwash you.
They'll try to brainwash you.
The therapist who is looking out for your well-being.
Yeah. And, I've said there are therapists out there who aren't great.
Right.
There are definitely practices that are not good. And it's good to be critical of the person that you are entrusting your growth to. But therapy as a whole is not a bad practice.
No, it's
and
healthy.
It's good. Yeah, it was like, I don't know, she might tell you it's okay to be gay.
Gasp.
Shock horror. Yeah, he was right, she did. But yeah, so therapy was a scary thing for him.
Yes.
Because it was talking about.
Right. It wasn't letting him dictate everything.
Yeah. And the funniest thing to me is that because this was also during COVID, I was doing it entirely virtually while everybody was home. I was not shit talking y'all. There were a couple of times where like I like very tentatively brought up that something bothered me about something that he had done. And the counselor was like, oh, maybe we should talk more about that. And I was like, I just felt weird talking about anything with y'all in the house.
Right.
But...
Because you probably were envisioning us outside with our ears
right.
up against the door or something,
right.
which we weren't.
I knew you weren't. But, I mean, even... I'm not a quiet person.
Right.
And I was like, if you walk by the door, you're going to hear what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's true.
So it was just like, I have to be careful. Another topic that we wanted to discuss was the difficulty of acknowledging that you're being abused.
Yes.
It's hard to reach that point. And a big thing that, it's ironic to me, something that my dad said to me when everything was going down, was he was like, he was trying to be, the all-knowing mentor figure to us still. But he tried to be like, shame is like the real killer. You need to let go of shame and blah, blah, blah. Because obviously that was a root cause of a lot of his lies.
Right.
But the irony is, that's one thing that he said was right. I still think it is true that shame is such a thing to be aware of, at least. Admitting that you've been abused is tantamount to admitting that you were wrong about this relationship.
Exactly.
You were wrong thinking that this was fine. You were wrong when people brought up, hey, isn't that kind of weird?
Right.
I don't like that your boyfriend's doing that. Or, things like that. You were wrong. It's not your fault by any means, but you were wrong. And that sucks to admit.
It does.
It's so hard. And I say this as somebody who, again, didn't have any before to know about. I still feel that same shame of how did I not?
How did I not know?
How did I not know?
Mm-hmm.
How did I just accept that? I've looked back at like old messages with friends when like I had a particularly weird conversation or something with my dad, and the way that I talked about him at those points, and I'm like so embarrassed by the way I was talking at that point, where it's just like, oh, you know, he's growing so much, he's doing better, or all these things where I was so wrong.
You were hopeful.
I was hopeful, which is, and again, it's not a terrible thing to be wrong.
Oh, I like that. It's true.
Yeah, you like everybody's wrong sometimes, and yeah,
it's not a terrible thing.
It's not a terrible thing. You don't have to be that ashamed of it.
It's way worse to pretend like you're not ever wrong.
Oh yeah, and that's what Dad did.
Yeah.
And I know I used to do that a little. I was a little prideful with like, oh, I'm so smart and blah blah blah.
I think again that's being human.
Oh, of course. Everybody has. You should have pride.
Yes.
To an extent. And shame is difficult to deal with, but that's, I think, it's okay. You know, it's okay to have been wrong. Doesn't matter if it was for 30 years or less or more. Another thing that gets complicated, because as we said, we're going to have a different episode about spiritual abuse probably.
Yes.
But especially for those of us who were in the church being spiritually abused, or in just, it doesn't even have to be spiritual abuse by the abuser. It can be a particular church that's not giving the best messages.
Right.
They can tell you things like, divorce is wrong, you need to be forgiving.
Right.
You know, be godly.
Right.
Give forgiveness. All these messages are, you know, we want to be good people.
Right.
We want to be forgiving. And maybe we do think that divorce is a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the acknowledgement of abuse then becomes breaking your faith as well, a little bit.
Yes.
So between the shame and the breaking of your faith, and I know that was always a thing, like if you start breaking your faith, you're going to go down a very slippery slope, and then you're going to become godless, and those systems really hold you in place, and it can be so shattering. And it is hard. And we were saying before with your story, you were going through a billion other things, and you were broken down, and all this, and now you're having to face that, oh my God, I was wrong about him.
It was easier to assume I was wrong about anything else.
Right.
And not him.
Yeah. Well, you were wrong if he was the one in the right.
Yes.
Another thing that we were going to bring up is that education about these topics is very important. Again, internet education has its pros and its cons.
Right.
We say on the internet.
Right. But it's true.
It's true. We're hoping to be one of the pros, but not a professional pro. But oh no.
We're trying to be positive.
We're trying to be a positive source
of information.
Of non-professional information on the internet. But yeah, even with correct education and information, it doesn't matter. It's still really hard to recognize when you're being abused.
It really is.
Because again, you're just like, oh, that's normal.
Especially because most abusers are going to go out of their way to manipulate, to lie, and to convince you that it's either all in your head or it is all normal.
Right.
So it's not just you yourself trying to gloss over things.
Right.
You're having somebody who is purposefully trying to tell you that, no, you're mistaken.
Right. And then, you know, like, the abuser gets the same education as you about, like, these topics and goes, why are you gaslighting me? I didn't do that.
Right.
So, like, there's a very different experience between, like, learning words and concepts and actually understanding.
Right.
Oh
Which is why I think it's so important to hear stories.
Yes.
I kind of thought that I was, like, just a one in a million, like, this would never, ever happen. And our story is incredibly unique.
Yeah.
But I have found a surprising amount of people that have similar stories.
Yeah, everybody resonates. I think everybody's story is unique.
Yes.
I don't think any two people share the exact same experience with abuse.
That's true.
And there are definitely patterns that we can find in all of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of patterns in ours. But hearing, like, the stories really can make you understand, like, oh, wait, that's bad.
Because you can hear it, you can define it, you can have, you know, an entire chapter about a topic, but that doesn't show you what it really looks like played out in real life.
Yeah. And I think even here, you know, I'll say this as a caveat here, even hearing stories, because they're all unique, you might be like, oh, that sucks for that person. Anyways.
Yeah.
Mine doesn't look exactly like that. Or it's a difficult thing to understand and come to terms with.
Our abuser also likes to give stories about how he was abused. And so...
Oh, I was like, does he?
Although...
As a child, he likes to talk about his neglect.
Yes.
Yes.
I was going to say, maybe you hadn't heard anything because you did such a good job of breaking things off.
I did break things off, but I will say, before I reached my breaking point, which was you telling me everything,
yes,
I had a lot less footwork to do. You had moved to California. I was still in Texas for college. I decided to visit you for spring break. And he drove me to the airport, but before we got to the airport, he took me to his childhood house.
Oh.
And he talked about how it was just him, and sometimes he had a twin brother. He was not that alone. I mean, obviously you need parents, but like he would talk about it like he was like the loneliest child and and his parents were never home. And I think there is genuine abuse and neglect in his story, but that doesn't excuse continuing the cycle.
Yeah.
So even realizing that and acknowledging it, it's also hard to escape.
It is.
It's hard to get out. I mean, we were lucky because we had family that you were still connected to in spite of the isolation. I think abusers like to do this, but I feel like, for me at least, this is also an internal thing that I think, where it's like, just because they wronged me doesn't mean I need to react in a negative way. I don't need to hurt them back.
Right.
Which is true in cases that are not abuse.
I think it's funny because we both just took a big breath, like we were both like about to like say a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a difference between retaliation and not accepting abuse.
Of course.
And in an abusive situation, you're taught that your reactions are wrong.
Right.
And so that is not actually retaliatory. That is not a wrong.
Right.
Being able to say, I don't want you to treat me this way is not a wrong.
Right. But when you've been groomed to believe that it is, then it's like, oh, I'm really hurting them.
And when you have an abuser who is very good at manipulation, they're going to turn it to their advantage every time.
Proper boundary setting it's not abusive. You're not manipulating people. I feel like when you are in abuse, it's easy to hurt the people who aren't hurting you.
Yeah.
Because you are so stressed. People lash out.
Yeah.
And I know that that's a big thing for people who support abuse victims. You have to, like, there are people who are like, if it's like a severe situation, you have to stay so strong to support somebody going through that because they will lash out at you.
That's making me think the only people I had the ability to lash out with were you guys.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
I think I remember maybe 4 or 5 instances of you yelling or being particularly lashing out to me, which is not many in the grand scheme of things.
I'm still a marshmallow, but when you're so tightly bottled up and then it's shaken.
Yeah. By children who are going to shake you up.
Actual children, but people pretending to be children. And
oh yeah, but I'm saying I think it's natural that we as your children would upset you sometimes.
Yes.
To some extent. But
I couldn't lash out at anyone else.
Right. And you were isolated from...
Yeah.
And you weren't going to lash out at your boss, even though she kind of deserved it. Maybe sometimes.
No, I didn't ever lash out at her.
No, I don't imagine you would have.
No.
And you wouldn't lash out at kids at school.
Of course not. Right.
So, like, yeah, it's like, I guess the point is hurt the abuser instead of, like, hurt the abuser's feelings by standing up for yourself, because the alternative is probably hurting yourself or hurting the people who are kind of, like, looking out for you more.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a weird message because there's so many specific situations where that's not good advice.
You're right. Yes. Yes.
But I think for that kind of feeling of, like, I shouldn't, respond. Mm-hmm. I shouldn't react. Sometimes you gotta.
Especially because we were living in a 24/7 pressure cooker.
Correct.
So our abuser was constantly stifling us.
Yes. Well, I was a little less because I had more...
You had more outlets.
Yeah, I had more freedom, more outlets. You'll be a nicer person if you leave. Like, I'm speaking that from experience. I'm
a happier person.
This is true. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm a nicer person because I was forced to be nice, I think.
I think the thing is we feel mean for standing up for ourselves.
Yes,
we feel
true.
Now that we're mean because we're not letting other abusers into our lives.
Mm-hmm.
But I think to the people who, like, we're closer with, I know I mean, this also could just be growing. I'm still young, but...
My child. My baby.
Oh, no. I just feel like I've gotten to be a lot better at being compassionate to people. It's a lot easier to be like, it's not a big deal that this thing happened.
Right.
Because you're not under that constant stress.
Right.
And I imagine there are ways that, even with you, I feel like you have been more understanding or chill with things with me.
Yeah.
That, there are things that I wouldn't talk to you about prior to everything.
Right.
But that was one of those things that when you moved out and before I knew anything,
mm-hmm.
there was the whole thing of when you were like, I think we're going to get a divorce. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And part of that was because I could tell from our phone conversations, you were better. You were something that happened before you were in the know, I think. There was a situation where I'm not going to launch into the whole story. The basis of the story is that my older brother had to help us rescue a kitten. Mm-hmm. And this was something that we did a lot.
Whole other story. But he had to be up in, like, the crawl space of the first floor for, like, a couple of hours. Mm-hmm. Which is rough.
A long time, yeah.
It's a long time. It's rough.
But you and I had done this a lot.
Yes.
And then the expectation was afterwards I was going to care for the kitten for at least a week. Mm-hmm. And this was right after I'd already been, like, fostering a separate kitten mm-hmm. that we had just given away. And I was like, finally, I get to take a break from sitting on the bathroom floor all the time and getting my pillow peed on.
Oh, the joys of life.
I love kittens. I do. But when that happened, Dad was fawning over my older brother. Mm-hmm. He was like, oh, you worked so hard, you did so much, and oh, what do you want for lunch? Whatever you want, we'll get fast food. And then it was like something I couldn't eat,
which to us was like a big deal,
right?
Because we
didn't have much choice.
But getting fast food was like a big treat.
Yes. And I have a very specific diet. I can't have gluten, so I don't think even I could eat it. I'm not going to complain about my older brother getting a treat if he deserved a treat,
Right.
But I can't have. Big deal. It was the fact that he was fawned over and then I was just expected to do everything else.
Right.
And that was one of those times where I really was hit by those, like, gendered expectations.
Right.
Of, like, he did a little work. Oh, he needs everything.
Right.
I do work for the next full week.
And it's expected.
And it's just like, yeah, that's just what you do.
Right.
I don't care that you're in physical pain, whatever.
Right.
It wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do at that point.
Right.
But I came to you afterwards, and because I was just upset, and I came to you and I tried to talk to you about it, and you were defending him, which
Of course.
Mm-hmm. I'm like,
sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. But it was that sort of like, he didn't mean it like that, and that sort of defense where I was just like, oh, okay, so I am completely misunderstood, or like I am not valued.
Right. Which is not true at all.
Which is not true. But it felt like it in that moment. And
of course.
After you had moved, but before I found out, I had talked to you about this. I had a panic attack. I had called my dad because he was the person I was supposed to call because he wasn't working. He didn't have anything else to do other than lecture me when I have a panic attack. But
because that helps.
Oh yeah, but yeah, I was like crying on the phone to him, and he started berating me for how I needed to stop doing this because I was ruining my life. He said that like directly. So I kind of I shut him down. I was like, no, you're not saying that to me right now.
Good.
And then I called you either same day or soon after, and I kind of talked to you about it, and you were like, oh, good for you. You were so excited. You were like, I am so proud that you said that. And I was like, what's happening?
Boundaries are good.
Yeah, it was like this huge shift in you.
Yeah.
That happened in months.
Oh yeah, it was like night and day.
Yeah. And you were able to be a more supportive parent in that way.
Yes.
It is easier to be a better person to the people that care about you when you're not, stressful environment. It's good for everybody.
It is. And I don't think you can fully understand, if you've never been in an abusive relationship,
right,
how all-encompassing it is.
It really is, yeah.
And it really can take over every little corner of your life.
Yeah, it really is all-encompassing, and your life is swallowed up by it.
Yeah.
And one thing that I was saying to you, I've learned kind of more about in conjunction with studying ADHD stuff. There's a lot of talk about like executive function and like decision fatigue, and these are things that are prominent in people with ADHD, but they can affect anybody because we're all human with brains. When you're under that pressure of abuse and you're making all of the decisions, especially for women, where it's like we have to decide what to cook, and we have to make all these decisions around what we're doing with the kids. We have to make all these decisions, blah blah blah. I say we. I've never done any of this, but it really is one of those things where you are so worn out. So it's easy to give up the financial.
Oh yeah.
Situation. Like, please take that.
And not only did I give it up willingly, I was like thankful.
Yes, because you have been using so much of like the executive function. You have been the secretary of the household, but also the boss.
The boss, the secretary, and then like the advocate, because like I had to not only know, it's been 6 months, we need to go to the dentist. I would then have to fight with him because he'd say we don't need to go to the dentist. Right. I'm like, well, but to be healthy, our kids need to see the dentist. And he would say, you're being stupid. And so not only do I have to keep track of everything, but I also have to advocate just to live a normal life.
So any decision you make is also a fight. I decided I want to go drop by the store on the way home. I have to make a call to make sure that's allowed.
Yes.
Like, that adds so much fatigue.
It does.
So trying to leave an abusive situation again while being worn down, while being fatigued, is really difficult. It feels like you just can't.
Oh, yeah.
This is a good point to mention. We were, again, very lucky to have therapy family.
Yes. Not just therapy family, but people who were just willing to listen and
Yeah.
lend a hand.
And, give us space to stay.
Yes.
Like, there's a lot of things that we were lucky for, but there are still resources out there for everybody that we really encourage people look into. The ones I wanted to mention were if you're in America, there's a hotline that's the 211. If you call 211 or if you go online, they have a lot of connections to many local resources. So that can be mental health, that can be food, housing. They're like a hub of information. That's one way to just find support. And then additionally, even just your local library. Libraries they have a lot of information.
And I did not know this. You actually told me about this.
Yeah, I had heard, I was kind of reading more about libraries have a lot of this local information because that's part of the community service that they're doing. So I went and got a library card at the local library and I was like, oh wow, there's a lot here.
Wait, did you ask for permission to go get a library card?
No, but I'm pretty sure I told you I did. I think I told you ahead of time. I think I'm gonna get a library card because I still do seek permission in that way.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, there are resources because it can be scary to not know where to go,
right,
or anything like that. So there are literally specific hubs of information for connecting you to the proper resource.
And I think especially if you're in a position where you just aren't sure.
Right.
It's like there's something not right, but I can't put my finger on it. I can't name it.
Yeah.
So you're not going to rush out to a domestic abuse shelter.
Right.
You need to have some information.
Yeah. And I think a library is also if you're in a situation where it's hard for you to go anywhere without reporting where you're going, or my location's being tracked, there are pretty good reasons to go to a library other than getting connected to resources.
This is true. I wanted to mention, in the U.S. there is the hotline 988, and that is the crisis hotline. So if you're feeling suicidal or you know somebody who is, you can call or text that number and get some help.
Yes.
There's help out there for everyone. I felt like I had nothing, and once I started reaching out, I had a lot at my disposal. Yeah. I just didn't know it.
Yeah.
Because my abuser had told me I can't do
that.
A
lot of us have been told that we're not allowed to, or the world is out to get us.
Right.
And it's not.
They're going to brainwash you.
Right. I think there are also other emergency hotlines that are, I think, state specific that you can absolutely find. Google is good for some things.
Yeah, and you can check out the Lilly Strong blog. I've got a lot of resources there. By the way, it's Lilly with 3 L's, LILLYSTRONG. And I have a lot of articles just about coming to terms with abuse, with different aspects of abuse, gaslighting, manipulation, coercive control, a lot of different things. So I encourage you to check that out and give us a like, give us a subscribe so you can hear more of our adventures.
Yay! As we said, I think having the specific story out there, for one, gives context.
Exactly.
But also,
there's going to be somebody out there who says, oh my gosh, them too.
Yeah, that too. Mm-hmm. It's helpful to hear these stories.
It is.
Yeah.
It definitely is.
So we had talked about the whole ruby slippers, bring you home, bring you out of abuse.
Gives you a power that you don't know you have.
Yes. You know the Wizard of Oz better than I do. And something that I was thinking about was, we're always told to keep our heads up, carry yourself, and
with confidence.
But sometimes you do kind of have to hang your head in a little shame, be a little messy, be a little upsetting, and when you look down, you might notice the ruby slippers that are on your feet.
I like that. They're right there with you.
They're right there.
Okay, well, until we talk to you guys again, just remember, like Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, there's no place like home.
And home is where there's no secret to be covered up.
Yay.
Yay!